Talk about a make-or-break week for Europe. The continent awakening to news this Monday of an insurgent Eurosceptic party taking Rome and Turin city halls. The week ends later with elections in Spain, and in between...
I'll be voting to remain. I think it's really important that we stay part of the European Union.
I think we're better off on our own, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, in 1940 we was on our own.
Yeah.
There was nobody to help us, you know, and we got through it.
Britain's in-out referendum campaign's been a high-stakes roller coaster ride, not just for Britain, but the whole continent as we watch. And whether it's remain or leave, the arguments have already rocked Brussels to the core. Or have they? What reaction to voter anger with the system? What would the European Union look like without Great Britain? What domino effect would a Brexit have on the continent as a whole? Today in the WENTE debate, is Britain a continent apart from Europe? With us, French Member of Parliament, Karine Berger of the Socialist Party. Thank you for being with us.
Pleasure.
Also with us, communications consultant François Chardon. Thanks for joining us.
Pleased to meet you.
Joining us from Brussels, Peter Kleppe of the Open Europe think tank. Always a pleasure.
Hello.
And in the studio, Evan O'Connell, Vice Chair of the Labour Party in France. Hi. You're for Remain.
I am.
Not many people for Brexit in Paris as such.
No, although we did have a debate on Brexit recently and a couple of UKIP members showed up. So there are a couple.
Paris-based UKIP
Paris-based UKIP members.
There you go.
There we go.
The WENTE debate where you can join the conversation, and you have on Facebook and Twitter the hashtag F24debate. Before we measure the impact of the EU referendum on the continent, let's just take a minute to reflect on the personal tragedy that's marred this campaign with the stabbing and shooting death of 41-year-old Labour MP Joe Cox by a 52-year-old constituent who in court stated his name as Death to Traitors Freedom for Britain.
May we and the generations of members that follow us in this House honour Joe's memory by proving that the democracy and freedoms Joe stood for are indeed unbreakable, by continuing to stand up for our constituents and by uniting against the hatred that killed her today and forevermore.
We need, Mr. Speaker, a kinder and gentler politics. This is not a factional or party political point. We all have a responsibility in this House and beyond not to whip up hatred or sow division.
Karine Berger, what have been the reactions here in France to this?
Terrible, because first of all, I said in the Conseil National of Parti Socialiste on Saturday that for me, for my generation, Joe Cox has become the symbol of European Union future. I mean, I am not of a generation who had Jacques Delors as a symbol. I'm younger than that. And for my generation, the question of what is the future of European Union can really now be linked to the image of Joe Cox. And I think that's the main problem. That is, I mean, she has been killed by certainly a far-right active person. And this person just wants to demonstrate that you can now, in Europe, be killed for being European.
And you heard there David Cameron and Jeremy Corbyn both saying that it's in part, the tone of the campaign that may have contributed, at least alluding to that fact.
I'm pretty sure that it's not directly linked to the campaign in Britain. It's linked to the rising of far-right ideas in European Union, in all countries. I mean, it happened in UK because there is this campaign, because there is this specific moment of tension. But frankly speaking, to stab, to kill a member of parliament for his or her European Union ideas is certainly a terrible symbol on where we are now in Europe.
Peter Kleppe, what was your reaction when you heard the news?
Well, it's terrible, of course. I would say there's a lot of unclarity, but clearly on both sides of the debate, what we've said with Open Europe is there was sometimes a lack of content. It was about fear-mongering. instead of just calmly stating the arguments. So, of course, it's true that you can always, when debates like this get really heated and people turn away from the arguments and go into all kinds of personal hatred discussions, then excesses like this happen in very exceptional cases.
That's an important point. François Chardon, the debate has been very emotional over the past several weeks.
Yes, indeed.
Are you surprised at the turn it's taken, with it turning, as the Guardian editorial last week put it, almost into a plebiscite on immigration and migration policy?
Yes, indeed. And I think this appalling act by a madman cannot be totally unrelated to that overall tone of the campaign, and I would agree with what we've just heard on that. Still, I think there's also a great deal of incomprehension and anger in the public about the way that the Union hasn't been able to handle the migration issue. And suddenly the Brexiters have tapped into that resource in their campaign.
Evan O'Connell, speaking to people over the weekend in Britain, there's a sense that the rage against the system, and obviously this is a really exceptional case, what happened in West Yorkshire, but the general feeling is a rage against the system, where that rage is a blur between Brussels and Westminster.
Absolutely. I observe it every day. I follow lots of Labour politicians, but then also other British politicians online, on Twitter, on Facebook, etc. And the amount of verbal abuse, violent abuse, especially directed towards female politicians, I'd say, is just extraordinary. It goes from rape threats to threats of assassination on a regular basis, and I'm not sure if the same is felt by female politicians in France, but I know that it has been highlighted as a real problem.
How do you explain the rage?
I think that it's partly a pan-European phenomenon. I think that people are angry with their elites all across Europe. I mean, I think if you look at France, there's obviously a rise of the far right here. There's a rise of the far right everywhere, and I think that that's certainly part of it. It's a sense that elites don't listen to the people. It's a sense that they have no power. It's a sense that they have no say. It's a sense that that their country isn't what they once imagined it to be, and frankly, I don't think many politicians anywhere have really come up with a solution that isn't populist and yet speaks to the people. I think that to actually do that is something that no one's really managed just yet.
Last year in regional elections here in France, I saw one citizen in northern France, where the National Front, the far-right movement, made very big inroads, saying that'll show them in Paris. Do you get that when you're at home in your constituency?
In my constituency in the southeast of France, where there has been a very high level of Front National in the last regional election, and we have decided not to go to the second round in order to stop the possibility of Mrs. Le Pen to win. So I am exactly I am elected in a constituency where there is exactly this issue, that is an incredibly rise of far-right ideas, hate against strangers, hate against anything that can be seen as a stranger or someone as a stranger, and most of all, and I think that the key point in the Brexit discussion in the UK, the question of borders. That is, what are the borders right now in Europe? Are there national? Are there maybe like regional borders? I heard that in my constituency. Are they European? And of course, in the UK, the borders is even linked to the question of being an island. And it's a specific question. What is the identity? Where is the limit of my nation? And that's the question that is in the center.
But I've heard people describe this as a feeling of rage and helplessness towards globalization.
Of course, it's directly linked.
And saying that, the part of the problem is that Europe just means foreigners coming in and taking my job.
I think there is at least two mechanisms. First of all, you have this globalization that people do not understand every time, and that is seen as a danger, because there is a part of danger in globalization. And so if you don't have any more borders, if you don't have any more sovereignty in order to protect you against these dangers, or against these threats, of course your action is to try to stop that. And the second point is, of course, the immigration discussion. The main problem is that, for instance, in France, the refugees crisis has not brought a lot of increase of the immigration in France. I mean, there has been like 300% more last year, nothing. And even if these figures are very low, there has been a huge feeling of being, let's put it that way, invaded by strangers. And so we are not in a rational discussion. We are really in a deep, feeling discussion. What is my nation?
Peter Klepper, when David Cameron called that referendum back in 2013 as part of his campaign promises ahead of his re-election, did you see all this coming?
Well, yes, because you have to know that also Tony Blair had promised a referendum on Europe. He promised a referendum on the European Constitution, which was not necessary anymore after France and the Netherlands then rejected the European Constitution, and then the Constitution was passed anyway in the form of the Lisbon Treaty. Now, I think basically what happens in Britain now is just a precursor to all the unrest on the continent. Many people are not happy with the European Union as it is. Now, I think most people have not a problem with the fact that Brussels makes sure that countries are not protectionist, that they allow Ryanair and Wizz Air to operate. I think many people agree with that part of the EU. So if the EU ever reflects on itself, it should definitely keep the good part, which is that part, the lowering barriers to trade. No. However, people are annoyed by the fact that Europe intervenes into national budget decisions, that it helps to organize transfers, both at the EU budget level or in the Euro crisis, and that it even tries to abuse the refugee crisis by grabbing its hands on very sensitive national decisions on asylum. This particularly created a lot of anti-EU sentiments in Central and Eastern Europe. So I think the EU, in order to basically win the hearts of Europeans again, it should just go back of its original idea of lowering barriers to trade on the continent, which is already ambitious enough.
Karine Berger, I see you shaking your head here.
I disagree deeply. The main issue is the question of borders, that is of the barriers between countries and between people. You cannot lower borders, lower barriers without explaining why you are doing that. And we are not explaining at all. We are just building a new market where there is only economic issues, where there is no human issues, where there is no moral issues, where there is no political issues, and moreover, where there is no defense and security issues. That's the key question. We cannot keep on.
So the answer is more EU?
Of course, the answer is more European Union, but more European Union for defense, more European Union for citizenship, more European Union for security. People can see everywhere in Europe that we are attacked by the rest of the world with terrorist attack. So what are we doing? We cannot just explain. We try to lower barriers. It's exactly the wrong answer to what UK electors are asking right now, I think.
François Chardon, win or lose, will this push for more integration be stopped after Thursday's referendum?
I think there's a false hope that Brexit could lead to a greater focus for EU integration. I think this is about as false as the hope of some sovereignists who favor the Brexit for exactly the opposite view, that it would somehow open the door for more countries to negotiate a way out. I think what strikes me is that we French are not really in a good position to take a critical stance on, fear of immigrants or the like, and it's certainly.
Because we've taken in so few compared to the Germans and the Swedes.
For instance, yes, that's part of it. But also, when you look at the opinion polls, you see between 32 and 41% of the French who seem to see a good thing in Brexit, compared to 15% in Germany. So it's something quite. And you mentioned Jacques Delors, for instance, who argued in favor of a Brexit. So for one of the so-called founding fathers for my generation.
All right, that's an important point. The rage against the system taking many forms in many countries. Rome's election of its first female mayor looks more like a plebiscite. Virginia Raggi garnering 67% of the vote. Her five-star movement, co-founded by TV host and satirist Pepe Grillo, wants a referendum as well, not on leaving the EU, but on the Eurozone, on leaving the Euro. Raggi's election laid out last week by UKIP leader Nigel Farage in an interview with Italian daily Corriere della Sera, where he said the following: on June 19th, the five-star movement elects the mayor of the capital and changes Italy. On June 23rd, Britain leaves the EU and changes Europe. We will trigger a domino effect. After us, other Northern European countries will leave, starting with Denmark. The EU is about to collapse, disintegrating into several pieces. I see Evan O'Connell shaking his head. One person who does agree with Nigel Farage is the leader of France's far-right National Front.
What they're scared of is that the United Kingdom is regaining its freedom to trade with whom it pleases. We want all the citizens of Europe to get their freedom back.
Marine Le Pen there speaking in Austria over the weekend. Yep. Evan O'Connell?
It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. To believe that Brexit will suddenly lead to some kind of domino effect, I think, is insane. I think that the first country that could possibly shift towards some kind of leave referendum is perhaps if Wilders were to win the Dutch elections. He said that he will hold a referendum on Dutch membership of the EU. I think that he'll lose it if he holds it. I think that most Dutch people don't want to leave the EU because they realize that they live in a small country at the center of Europe, at the heart of Europe.
All right, we're going to pick up on that point. We have to take a quick break. You're watching the France 24 debate.